The Trump administration hasn't held back from giving Islamabad a dressing down. The tough talk on Pakistan's failure to fight terror has gone up a few notches this year, but new reports suggest this has only pushed Pakistan to concede more to China. Now, according to latest reports, China is likely to build a joint naval and air force base in Pakistan's Jiwani. What's significant is that it's close to the Iranian border. This will be China's second military base in a foreign country after the one it has in Djibouti. Now, the Jiwani military base will be operated and controlled by China on Pakistani soil. Not only is this a projection of Chinese naval and air power, it's of strategic concern to India. The Jiwani Peninsula is, after all, close to the Chabahar Port, which India has jointly developed with Iran and Afghanistan. The aim is to ensure a trade corridor for landlocked Afghanistan. However, for observers, this military base is also a part of China's string of pearls strategy. In fact, to accommodate China's presence in Jiwani, the population of the peninsula in Balochistan will have to move out. According to sources, 16 top officials of the PLA visited Jiwani to meet 9 top military officials of Pakistan last December to close the deal. The operative part is this: as Islamabad veers away from Washington, it will find itself trapped more and more in China's ambitions in the region. By conceding to Chinese demands, Pakistan will compromise its sovereignty. First, it was Obor, then Gwadar, and now Jiwani, raising concerns that Islamabad is well and truly trapped in China's embrace. For experts, Pakistan's willingness to concede to China is due to mounting pressure from the United States. Washington wants more proof of Pakistan's crackdown on terror elements operating on its soil. The US had made aid conditional and has repeatedly said that when it comes to Pakistan, all options are on the table. This has rattled Pakistan. Now, in June last year, 3 Chinese naval vessels docked in Karachi harbour and over 3 days held a joint exercise with the Pakistani Navy. Pakistan is a major buyer of Chinese weapons and equipment, including naval surface ships and submarines. It underscores the point that the two navies can, at some point in the future, combine forces against India. But there's a larger issue here. Many Indian strategists believe that Pakistan is one link in China's plan to encircle and bottle India in the South Asia box. It's called the string of pearls theory and was first articulated nearly 14 years ago in a report titled Energy Futures Asia. The report was in fact sponsored by the Director Net Assessment in the Office of the US Secretary of Defense. The aim was to explore the Indian and Chinese thinking of their energy security and vulnerabilities and how satisfying their energy demands might shape the actions of both these countries. Let's look at this map to understand China's vulnerabilities and how its actions have underscored India's vulnerabilities. China turned a net oil importer in 1993 and today depends on Arab oil to meet 80% of its energy requirements. A lot of this oil comes from the Persian Gulf, chiefly Iran. It explains China's investment in the Gwadar port in Pakistan and the adjoining Jiwani port, which along with an airfield is being developed into a major military base. Now, on the Horn of Africa in Djibouti, China inaugurated a military base in August last year. Djibouti sits on the northwest edge of the Indian Ocean. Further south, in Sri Lanka, China signed a 99-year lease on Hambantota port at the close of last year. Now, Hambantota overlooks the Indian Ocean sea lanes through which China's energy supplies pass. The Indian Navy suspects Hambantota will emerge a major port of call for Chinese submarines in Bangladesh. China is reported to be pushing to develop a small naval facility near Chittagong port. Recall that China is selling the Bangladesh Navy 2 submarines. Further, in the east, in Myanmar, Chinese companies want to take an 80% stake in the port of Kyokpyu in the Bay of Bengal. China may be driven by concerns of securing its energy supplies, but there's no doubt that a military strategy also exists. If the Bangladesh and Myanmar plans fructify, China will have effectively countered India from the Arabian Sea to the Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal. India is countering China with the Chabahar Port development in Iran. The Chabahar is 230 kilometers from Gwadar and provides an alternative route to Afghanistan. In Sri Lanka, reports say that India wants to take over Hambantota airport and is building military ties with Bangladesh and Myanmar. It recently signed an agreement to use Singapore's Changi naval base. India is working to develop the Quadrilateral or Quad, an alliance which includes Japan, the United States and Australia and is committed to reinforcing the right of free passage in the South China Sea. It is working to build military ties with Vietnam, including access to Cam Ranh Bay on the South China Sea. There's been speculation that India will sell Vietnam the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile as well. Joining me this evening is Arun Singh, the former ambassador to the United States. He's joining us from Delhi. With me also right now from Islamabad is Imtiaz Gul. He's a senior journalist in Pakistan. And from Washington, Ray Locker, the national security editor for USA Today. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Let me start with Ambassador Arun Singh. Ambassador, what do you make of these suggestions that, the United States' continued pressure on Pakistan is only pushing it further into the embrace of China, and that's going to have strategic implications for India?
So whether or not US put pressure on Pakistan, I think Pakistan would have moved closer to China because they see China as, for them, a very reliable partner, almost like an alliance, and they've been working in that framework for a long, long time. And you referred in your summary to the developments at Jiwani. And that should not really come as a surprise because China has been working on Gwadar Port for a long time, developing the port, developing the infrastructure surrounding that. And the entire China-Pakistan economic corridor, many have pointed out, has no economic rationale, but it has a strategic rationale for China. So that is the context in which they are certainly looking at development of things around Gwadar, possibly at Jiwani. And of course, you commented about whether there should be concerns for India. But beyond India, I would say, first of all, there should be concern in Pakistan. Does it make sense for the Pakistani people, for Pakistani nation, to get so much in the clutches of China, economically, militarily, strategically? And then going beyond, what about the countries in the Gulf? Because Djibouti is at one end of West Asia, Jiwani, Gwadar at other end of West Asia. So countries in West Asia, Iran, should be concerned at the growing Chinese military capacity in that region. And then not just countries in West Asia. If you look at the United States, European countries who have security and energy-related interests in the Gulf, they would be concerned. So I think it's a challenge for everyone. And it's a reflection of the fact that as its economic and military strength has grown, China is really looking at expanding its global presence. At the latest party congress, the Chinese president said that China is a major power, it's going to have a global presence, and step by step they're working on operationalizing that.
All right, let me go across to Imtiaz Gul on that note. Imtiaz, we've talked about India's concerns, but does Pakistan itself have concerns about, the extent to which China is entering Pakistan? There's CPEC, of course, there's Gwadar and now Jiwani as well. Is there concern that Pakistan is increasingly becoming more and more dependent on China?
Well, I don't think there's I would say that there is also another angle to look at it, and that is that China too is also becoming dependent on access to the Arabian Sea, to the Indian Ocean, on Pakistan, because it is sticking its neck out. It's pouring in some investment, some loans, which are partially cause of concern for a lot of Pakistanis. But as a whole, by the end of 2022, I think China would have spent about $45 billion on a number of road infrastructure projects, on communications, on energy. Energy shortages, I think, will end within next 1 year, and this is because of the injection of a few $1 billion that China has made in the last couple of years, ever since we signed the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor agreements. So as a whole, I don't think that this can be seen as an irretrievable dependence on China. It cuts both ways. It's a need-based arrangement that both countries have willingly entered into. And I think if one were to look at the geopolitics and the geoeconomics, this partnership, even if it's making or increasing dependence of Pakistan on China, probably would be welcome for the people of Pakistan because of the employment generation, because of the additional infrastructure that is coming about.
Fair enough.
Unlike the United States, where, over the past 16 years, we have had the major non-NATO ally status. We got some money, but with that money, I think Pakistan also got discredited, got only accusations, blames, a lot of acrimony with Washington. So I think Pakistan as a state which has been badly affected by the war on terror.
Fair enough. Allow me to come in, sir. Allow me to come in. I want to take some of that across to Ray Locker. Ray, that is true. Pakistan has received a great degree of criticism, especially of late from Washington on its failure to fight terror organizations operating on its soil. But really speaking, did anyone ever imagine that Islamabad and Washington would, let's say, part ways of any at least in the degree that we're seeing it right now. But that can be said about China as well. What seems to be a hunky-dory and a very strong relationship right now could run afoul in the years to come. And with this increased investment of China in Pakistan, isn't that a big risk as well that Islamabad is taking?
Well, I think here in the United States, the feeling was that the United States and Pakistan had a strong relationship. We need them militarily vis-a-vis Afghanistan. But with the election of President Trump, basically all bets are off. The feeling, here is that he could change his mind about any kind of policy. He could, have his anger piqued by any kind of development, which is what we saw recently with Pakistan and their inability or refusal to help with some people with the Haqqani network in Afghanistan. So the U.S.-Pakistani relationship is going to be in flux for a while. I think one of the problems has been for a long time, it's really only been seen through the military prism and not the economic prism. And one of the things that we see now with China is it's engaging Pakistan on an economic level, not necessarily a security level, even though that is a component of it. So the concern for the United States is how does it, keep its influence in Pakistan while trying to get some of what it wants in Afghanistan as well, and that's a huge challenge. All
right. Einar Tangen, a strategic analyst, is also joining us from Beijing. I'll take one question across from before we, progress on the program. Einar, would you say it's a relationship of unequals when it comes to Pakistan and China? Even though it seems like they're interdependent, China has very many options. I mean, look at the kind of overtures it's made towards Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Nepal, the Maldives, and all the way to Djibouti as well.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of why this is causing so much friction in India. These are areas which have been traditional spheres of influence for India, and this is not sitting well. I think if you look at it, dispassionately, China, as we've discussed in the past, has a very low number of resources per person. It ranks near the bottom 100 of countries in that regard. They have to have outlets both to bring resources in and to send trade out. They're concerned about the South China Sea, the saber rattling that they feel that the United States, Australia, India, and Japan is engaging in. So they're looking for other outlets that will allow them to continue to develop their economy. In terms of being unequal, absolutely. China is much larger than Pakistan. Pakistan is on the lower end of its development. But let's ask this question. Who has been putting infrastructure and investment into Pakistan, which it sorely needs? Quite frankly, the $42 billion that the Chinese are putting in is more aid than Pakistan has received since 1972 in total. So it's badly needed. The question is, can it be a win-win situation, or
All right, we'll try and reconnect with Einar, but he left us at a cliffhanger. That is a great question that he just asked. Can it be a win-win situation for both Pakistan and China? I'll take that question across to one of my guests. Stay with me a second, gentlemen, because the immediate threat appears to be to Chabahar Port in Iran, which India has developed. Chabahar is located less than 200 kilometers or 100 nautical miles from Gwadar, a deep-sea port in Pakistan's Balochistan province. Chabahar is located on the southeastern coast of Iran. It's of strategic importance to India. It lies outside the Persian Gulf and is easily accessible from India's west coast without having to enter the Persian Gulf. It provides India a reliable land and sea route into landlocked Afghanistan. Chabahar falls on the proposed 7,200-kilometer long north-south transport corridor, which will connect Europe with India by sea and land via Russia, Central Asia and Iran. Now, it is seen as a counter to Gwadar, which was built with China's assistance. The controversial China-Pakistan economic corridor links Gwadar with China's Xinjiang province through a network of roads. Ambassador Arun Singh, Einar Tangen posed that question quite poignantly, actually. Who is, if we are to look at this relationship between China and Pakistan, there's no doubt that China has very many options and Pakistan just happens to be one of them. Can it be a win-win for both countries, though?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, clearly for China, it's a strategic investment that they are making as they're expanding their footprint regionally in South Asia and globally. But I think from Pakistan's perspective, it really reflects that they are in a difficult situation because they're heavily dependent on the investment coming in from China, as one of your commentators mentioned. And this is not aid. These are loans being given, and the terms of the loans are very onerous. And much of the projects and orders that will be generated through this would not be going to Pakistani entities, but to Chinese entities. And from the experience in other countries, we found that such projects have generated tremendous indebtedness in the countries that are recipients. So there are going to be challenges and problems for Pakistan. In the immediate time frame, of course, there is this incentive of money coming in, but there will be costs to pay later. So I think that's one challenge. And then looking at the issue of Chabahar, which you mentioned in your comments, I think we should not really conflate Gwadar and Chabahar, because Gwadar is effectively being developed by China for its own purposes, and Pakistan is enabling that. Chabahar has been developed by Iran.